1 Yada Yahowah, Bersith. Beginning. 1. Bara, creation. In the beginning. One of the most revealing, intellectually stimulating, and least appreciated prophetic passages peers 14 billion years into our past. It is found in Genesis 1, known in Hebrew as Bersith, in the beginning. In it, Yahowah introduces himself, explains the creation process, and presents his plan to reconcile our relationship with him well in advance of humankind collectively walking away. Through brilliant allusions and captivating symbolism, God also chronicles the seminal events of human history, past, present, and future, providing the framework to understand his 7,000-year timeline, from life in the Garden of Joy to our scheduled, and impending, return. In addition to these three essential stories, Yahowah answers mankind's most important questions: is there a God, and why do we exist? He even provides a precisely accurate portrayal of universal creation and the conception of life, both within the correct epochs of time. In so doing, God proves his existence, demonstrates his role as our creator, and validates his inspiration of the resulting witness. It is not uncommon for God to paint several pictures with the same brush. For example, when one reads the story of Abraham and Yitzhak, Isaac on Mount Moriah meaning, revere, with a knowledge of archaeology and history, it's apparent that their story, which 2 chronicles an actual event in year 2000 1968 BCE, foreshadows another. And, indeed, their journey culminates with the prophetic announcement that the Passover lamb would be provided at the opportune time, and in this same place. And that is precisely what occurred 40 Yobel, 2,000 years thereafter. Each word spoken between father and son points to what our Heavenly Father and his Son, Yahowah and David, experienced fulfilling the Mikra, invitation to be called out and meet at Pesach, Passover in year 4000 33 CE. With this recognition, we come to appreciate that these dates serve as the preeminent meeting times on God's calendar, such that the parameters of his timeline emerge, enabling us to date the formative events pertaining to our relationship. And it is these same lessons which can be discerned from a thoughtful analysis of Bersith, Genesis 1. Another example of a timeline embedded in an inspired account and of 3 stories existing in one narrative is Hosea's marriage to the temple prostitute, Gomer. The betrothal served to acquaint the prophet and Yisrael, circa 700 BCE, with a tangible means to anticipate the consequence of their infidelity with God. Hosea's marriage to Gomer, therefore, served as a metaphor, illustrating how the Yahweh Jews, meaning, related to Yah and Yah's beloved, had broken their covenant relationship with him. The story also provided Yahowah with an opportunity to explain why he had to divorce his people to remain moral. In addition, this account reveals relevant lessons for us today, particularly for Orthodox Jews whose belief system and culture are very similar to those assailed in Hosea's open letter to the Northern Kingdom. Finally, Hosea's troubled marriage presents the framework on which to ascertain the time of Daud's arrival as the Pesach El in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, meaning, source from which guidance on 3 reconciliation flows, in 33 CE, year 4000 as well as his return with Yahowah in 2033 CE, year 6000 for redemption and reconciliation respectively. There are multiple timelines and simultaneous narratives embedded in Bersith, in the beginning, Genesis 1, but the brush strokes are much broader, bolder, and more complex. As is his custom, Yahowah chooses his colors for a reason and shades each word with great precision. Therefore, we will honor this great communicator by examining his selections under the etymological microscope of Hebrew lexicons, allowing us to amplify his message. Along with what we discover in the expansive examination of these words, I will share the insights which can be derived from them, associating this painting with other illustrations the ultimate artist has drawn. If nothing else, my commentary will slow us down so that we can reflect on the majesty of our Maker's message. However, be forewarned, this chapter on existence requires an additional layer of complexity in the midst of what is already an extremely challenging interwoven tapestry. To comprehend the creative side of Yahowah's testimony, we will have to understand aspects of the theory of relativity, some physics, astronomy, biology, and evolution, as well as have some familiarity with the fossil record, statistical analysis, the concept of space-time, and the nature of light. I will do my best to provide the necessary insights for the uninitiated while not boring scientists or overwhelming those who have a limited interest in these discoveries. But no matter where you reside on the spectrum of contemporary scientific awareness, what lies before us is challenging by design. Before we begin, there is some reassuring news. Yahowah is correct. From his perspective, it took precisely 6 24-hour days to create the universe and our 4-planet, conceive plant and animal life, and then design Adam to his specifications. And scientists are mostly right. Looking back from our perspective, the inception of the universe occurred between 14 and 15 billion years ago as energy coalesced into matter and time began to flow. Yahowah is correct in that plants and animals reproduce after their kind, and evolutionists are accurate in saying that species have evolved. Yahowah not only agrees with the concept of the Big Bang, he was the first to use the term. God even uses scientific jargon in his presentation of dinosaurs. His testimony is in complete harmony with the fossil record, especially as it is presented in the Cambrian explosion 500 million years ago. Therefore, this scientific review of Bersith isn't going to pit creationism against the Big Bang and evolutionary theory but, instead, demonstrate that they are in accord, right down to the details. The controversy that we have become accustomed to hearing only rages between the advocates of religion and secular humanists. God's accounting and the evidence are not in conflict, nor is Bersith, Genesis contrary to reason. Yahowah begins his open letter to man with a 7-word instruction. Barishith Elohim bara eth ha shamim wa eth ha eres. Beyond their meaning, the realization that there are 7 words in God's opening statement is not a coincidence. Every important aspect of Yahowah's plan, from the duration of the human experience to the creative timeline, from the Shabat, Sabbath to the Mikra, invitations to be called out and meet, is based upon the formula, 1, representing God, in addition to 6, representing humankind, equals 7, a perfect relationship and result. Man, a carbon-based 5 life form, with an atomic number of 6, was created on the 6th day. And while there is only one God, with one name and one purpose, without developing a relationship with us, God cannot grow and thus ceases to be infinite. Wanting to experience the joys of raising a family, Yahowah initiated this creative process, emphasizing the one special word among these 7, Bersith, in the beginning. Translated into English, Bersith, in the beginning, Genesis 1:1 reads, in, bar, near, within certain limits of, and in proximity to, regarding the account of, the beginning, Reshith, at the start of time and the initiation of the process of existence, concerning the first fruits of the labors of the head of the family, while addressing the thing which is of first and foremost importance, from Rosh, the head, the top and uppermost, the sum and total, first and beginning, the Almighty, Elohim, God, for accompaniment and association, eth, accordingly and therefore. Near and in proximity, created, Bara, conceived and caused a new existence, choosing perfect transformation and birth, planning, preparing, shaping, producing, and fashioning something out of the elements and making it happen, the Ha, spiritual world, Shamim, heavens and abode of God, and, Wa, alongside Eth, to accompany it as part of a relationship, the Ha, material realm, Eres matter, the physical and natural world. Sometimes, even within the scale of universal creation, it is the smallest things that are the most revealing. The shortest word, Eth, is the only one which is repeated. And yet, it is the only one every religiously and politically inspired translation ignored. While I did not have to translate either occurrence of Eth in God's opening statement, as ignoring its presence has become scholastically acceptable when rendering ancient Hebrew into English, Eth indicates that God was 6 in proximity to his creation and that he initiated the process for the purpose of accompaniment and relationship, and was, therefore, seeking a close association. These concepts are germane to our understanding. By using Eth, God makes us aware of his proximity to this creative event. That is exceedingly important because in the presence of great energy, mass, or velocity the rate that time flows, slows appreciably. This realization will allow us to correlate a clock on Earth to one at creation and thereby sync the creative timeline using the now proven theory of relativity. God is also providing us with a reason for creation. He is seeking a relationship and wants to remain in close association with us. This in turn serves to underscore the purpose of the Torah, which is to present the familial covenant relationship. Speaking of that association, the letters which comprise the Torah's first word are telling. In ancient Hebrew, the alphabet Moses used to scribe the original autograph of the Torah, and reading right to left, Bar Arisith reads. The first letter, Beith, when used as a preposition means in or with. Its name is derived from Beith, meaning home and family. Beith serves as the root of Berith, the Hebrew word translated as covenant, thereby explaining the nature of the intended relationship. That is why the character was originally drawn to depict the floor plan of a home, one with a singular entrance or doorway. Brought together, these concepts convey God opening the door and inviting us into his home to be with him and to become part of his family. The second letter, a Rosh, originally written, explains how we can avail ourselves of this opportunity. Drawn to depict a human head, the letter indicates that we 7 should use our eyes to observe and our ears to listen to what God has to say about his covenant home and family. After we process this information, we can then use our mouths to respond appropriately. Beyond this, Rosh, which is derived from Resh, reveals that this quest should be our primary objective and foremost priority because this is the first family. The third alphabetic character in Yahowah's first word to mankind is an Aleph. Initially drawn in the form of a ram's head, it conveys strength and power in addition to the ability to lead and protect the flock. As such, the Aleph is the first letter in the title God, El, which means Almighty, and in Ab, Father. This brings us to the fourth letter, a Shin. It was scribed to symbolically represent teeth. This was done to depict words and convey language, specifically the nourishment his words provide. The next letter is a Yod. It was based upon, and drawn to depict, a Yod, the Hebrew word for hand. It conveys the idea of reaching out to accomplish something. Especially relevant in this regard, reveals that God is reaching down and out to us with an open hand because he wants to lift us up and raise us as his children. In particular, the Yod was not communicated with a closed fist engendering fear but, instead, as an open hand extended in friendship and support. Lastly, we are greeted by a Thith, presented by A in ancient Hebrew. This letter was drawn to depict an enclosure, symbolic of God's protection. Then, the internal marking denotes a signature, affirming that Yahweh signed his name on the Torah's first word and upon those who have sought his protection. Reshith conveys many pertinent thoughts, including first and best. It speaks of the beginning or initiation of a process. Its first fruits connotation is very significant spiritually because it identifies something of value which is set aside and dedicated to God. Reshith describes the idea of being the head of the family. Also, with regard to Yisrael and Yahweh, who serve as the control group in Yahweh's revelation, Reshith means to make a division and distinction. I use the term control group, because that is the role Yahweh perform in God's unfolding story. By choice and covenant, by word and deed, by land and spirit, they were and remain separate from all others. The chosen people serve as a living, quantifiable, and documented example of the benefits of choosing to form a covenant relationship with Yahweh, as well as the consequences of separating from him. Through these people, we also witness the consequence of foregoing the relationship God prescribed through an ill-fated affinity for the religions and politics of man. The most significant aspect of Reshith, and its second most frequent translational rendering, is first fruits, symbolic of reaping the harvest of purified grain, a metaphor for saved souls, and waving a sheaf before Yahweh so that it will be accepted. Kara, Leviticus 23:9-11. This called-out assembly, known as Bikurim, is indicative of men and women being born as children into Yahweh's covenant family, something we will learn a great deal about in subsequent volumes. Suffice it to say for now, as Yahweh's third of 7 Mikrei, the festival feast of first fruits, which is accurately translated as firstborn children, follows Passover and unyeasted bread. It is the first of 3 harvests of saved souls included in God's 7-step plan of redemption and reconciliation. It signifies our acceptance before God and our reunification with him after we accept the gifts of life and perfection represented by the Mikrei of Pesach and Matzah. On Bikurim, 9 firstborn children, we are adopted into our Heavenly Father's family. Therefore, the first word provides a foreshadowing of Yahweh's ultimate intent. Since this is important, let's linger here a moment longer. The 3 spring feasts commemorate actual historical events experienced by the children of Israel during their rescue from political, religious, economic, and military oppression in Miraim, Egypt. These days are also prophetic, predicting when Yahweh will honor his promise to provide the covenant's benefits. They are instructive, too, explaining precisely how God will ransom us from our misguided propensity to be religious. During the Yatzah, Exodus, and during the ultimate fulfillment of the Mikrei, the blood of the Passover lamb was smeared on an upright pole forming the doorway to eternal life. The following day, and as a result of the Feast of Unyeasted Bread, the invasive fungus of yeast was removed from the grain. This is synonymous with the removal of religious and political guilt from our souls. This confers an immortal and perfected status, enabling the beneficiaries to be adopted by God, redeemed and reconciled on the 3rd day in commemoration of first fruits. God used a term that suggests he has a plan to redeem that which he had yet to create, bringing mankind back into eternal fellowship. In many ways, the first word's diverse meanings summarize all the words which follow. Continuing to focus on Reshith, we discover that it is based upon Rosh, which means head, top, summit, chief, sum, and beginning. And in this vein, the summit of Mount Moriah, Moriah meaning, Revere, is where God's beloved son, David, fulfilled Passover and unyeasted bread, leading to firstborn children so that those who accept his sacrifice become perfected and immortal children of God. In this regard, Yahweh could well be revealing an aspect of creation I've long suspected, that the experience for him and the benefit for us is entirely cerebral and, therefore, something for us to contemplate in our heads. The most fascinating aspect of creation is the thought process which made it possible, both the purpose and expectations. It required precise planning and exacting calculations for the result to serve this purpose. Trying to glimpse into Yahowah's head, if we may be so bold, is the most interesting aspect of the account of the inception of the universe and conception of life. Why did God do it? Even for a seven-dimensional being, creating the perfect six-dimensional environment for life and exploration, revelation, interaction, and choice was not easy. It required a multivariable equation which had to be the most complex ever contemplated. It was not so much the enormous amount of energy needed to accomplish this ambitious goal but, instead, the nature of that energy and how it was applied, in addition to establishing the parameters by which it would interact to form matter. Then there was the challenge of creating DNA, the three-dimensional language of life. Using it, an endless array of distinct life forms was possible. But how would the living interact, evolve, and grow? Especially intriguing, all of this had to be the product of intelligent planning such that the end result would be somewhat predictable and the desired result achieved. And yet, there also had to be an infusion of sufficient chaos to make the process interesting and free will possible. At least one iteration of a resulting life form would have the capacity to reflect Yahowah's nature, showing a desire to form a family. Individually, this creature would have the capacity to be upright and observant, thoughtful, and industrious, and be able to understand spoken and written language while being capable of loving and raising children. And collectively, the focus of God's intent would possess the capacity for evil. Then there is the issue of time. As we shall discover, the universe and the life within it were conceived to play out from beginning to end over 7 days or some 14 billion years, depending upon the relative point from which time is experienced. The most relevant life form would exist in the ordinary flow of time and yet have a lifespan long enough to come to know his maker and make a choice regarding him. It would necessitate creating an aspect of his being capable of experiencing emancipation from the bounds of time should he choose to be elevated beyond 3D and join his creator in the seventh dimension. While the result may have been calculable, even foreseeable, Yahowah would refrain from witnessing most of it play out, otherwise, nothing would be gained by it. For the desired relationship to be genuine and meaningful, the future children of the covenant would have to be capable of making good and bad decisions, accepting or rejecting God, and thus becoming a source of amusement or aggravation. There would be a beloved child in the midst of it, someone to love and to return his Creator's devotion, similar to a father and son. Indeed, there was. The man in the center of it all, the individual who embodies creation's purpose, the ultimate recipient of Yahowah's compassion, is David. The more we come to appreciate their relationship, and what they achieved together, the better we will understand the reason we were created. To this end, Yahowah conceived language and then he used it creatively. Since Hebrew is his chosen dialect, every linguistic nuance of this lexicon is worthy of our 12 consideration. In that light, we discover that Reshith has a scientific connotation in addition to its spiritual meaning. Reshith denotes the point when and where space and time began. This is something we only came to understand quite recently. Despite what you may have heard suggesting that scientists dismiss God's Besith account, the truth is just the opposite. With each new discovery, the position of science is changing. The scientific community has migrated from being in conflict with Yahowah's 3,500-year-old testimony to being in harmony with it. Old science has been refuted, not God. For example, throughout the first half of the 19th century, prior to the discovery and acceptance of the redshift found in light was formed by retreating galaxies and the observation of CMB radiation, the overwhelming majority of scientists, some 99% of them, believed the universe was a constant without beginning or end. They claimed that it always existed and was not created. They were obviously wrong. While Alexander Friedmann was the first to publish a set of equations showing that the universe might be expanding in 1922. Then in 1929, Edwin Hubble proved that the recessional velocity of a galaxy increases with its distance from Earth. He did so based on the idea of a redshift, where the wavelengths of light are stretched when emerging from retreating objects. Then, in 1978, the co-discoverer of CMB emanating from the Big Bang, Arno Penzias, a Jewish physicist, won the Nobel Prize for his affirmation of a creational event. To capture the moment, England's most acclaimed astronomer, Arthur Eddington, said, philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order of nature is repugnant to me. The truth is often repulsive to those who focus on the creation rather than the creator. Yet if they were to change their perspective and observe Yahowah's 13 Torah, they would come to better understand our universe and life in it. They would have understood long ago that the cosmos had a starting point, a place where space and time began. After all, the truth was revealed nearly 3,500 years before man stumbled upon it. They would know that life was the result of an intelligent design, one commissioned for a particular purpose. While Yahowah's creation account isn't merely a scientific explanation of our genesis, it has proven scientific implications that humankind would not be able to fully appreciate before Einstein's theories of special and general relativity. They demonstrate that before matter was created through the transformation of energy into mass, there was no time or space. Time began when matter and space were formed. That is precisely what Rishith reveals, the initiation of the process of the state of being, the first point in spacetime. Consistent with Einstein's theory, where light is the universal constant, or, light was the first thing God made manifest. Like Yahowah, himself, it exists outside of and beyond the constraints of time. According to relativity, at the velocity of light, the past, present, and future exist simultaneously. That is why the verb, higher, I was, I am, and I will be, lies at the heart of Yahowah's name. God exists beyond the confines of the four dimensions of time and space we understand. When he so chooses, he can see yesterday, today, and tomorrow as if they are all here and now. However, to relate to us and to enter our more finite realm, Yahowah can either use emissaries such as Malach, or he can convert some of his light energy into matter. Science has recently come to recognize that all matter is stabilized light. This transformation through the shedding of dimensions and energy from light to matter is 14 what enabled a diminished aspect of Yahowah to tread alongside Adam in the Garden of Eden, to meet with Abraham in the Promised Land, and to converse with Moses while providing his Torah. Today, we have an even clearer view of our Creator. We not only have the perspective that history, science and time provide, but we have unfettered access to the words he shared with these men and with all of his prophets. Light, like Yahowah, is the universal constant. Light is the purest form of energy. And energy is the source and substance of the physical world. At creation, when energy became matter consistent with Einstein's E equals mc2, energy is equivalent to mass when matter is multiplied by the speed of light squared, the four-dimensional construct we call spacetime began. This is important because everlasting life, the nature of light, the definition of Yahowah's name, the substance of first fruits, and the essence of prophetic revelation, requires a transition from our mortal three-dimensional existence and beyond, to the fourth dimension where time eternally exists in the past, present, and future. That is not to say that Yahowah and the universe he created are limited to four dimensions. The empirical evidence confirms that there are more. For example, scientists are completely baffled when it comes to explaining the nature of the strongest macro influence on the universe, gravity, the tendency of matter to attract. And even if we were to stumble on an explanation of gravity's nature, we would then only understand 4% of the forces influencing our observable reality. 96% of the energy and matter at work in the universe is invisible to our observations. This unknown influence, labeled dark energy and dark matter, provides either a counterforce to gravity, demonstrating a repulsive nature, or just the opposite, keeping things bound together. String theory suggests this could be the result of 15 several more dimensions, albeit within a point, and thus acting at the microatomic level. While I could neither fully understand it nor prove it directly, I would not be surprised if there are 7 dimensions, Yahowah's favorite number, with 3 dimensions intersecting at right angles at the micro level. If that is so, the 5th dimension might explain dark energy, the repulsive nature of the unknown force influencing our universe. God might call this dimension Basha, choice, as it provides the ability for us to separate from God if we make light of his gravity. Under this premise, the 6th dimension would be dark matter, the unknown source of universal attraction, the tendency of things to draw closer together. He might call it Asher, relationship. The 7th could provide the basis of consciousness and communication, the language of perfect communion, the essence of thought and creativity which binds us together and causes all things to occur. Many aspects of our universe, especially at the subatomic and galactic levels, demonstrate cognitive awareness. Examples of this phenomenon include the fact that light responds differently when it is observed, the half-lives of radioactive decay whereby individual particles demonstrate coordinated behavior, and the ability of living cells to communicate with and influence the behavior of wave particles. Yahowah might call the 7th dimension the Word because it brings us to the spiritual realm in heaven. Before we leave our study of Rishith, I would be remiss if I did not share that there are many appropriate ways to transliterate the sound of this Hebrew noun in English. Comprised of the letters Rosh, Aleph, Shin, Yod, and Thith, you will find this word which is pronounced Re middle dot sheath, conveyed as, Resit, Resit, Rezith, Rezith, Resith, Resith, Rezieth, and Rezieth in Hebrew dictionaries and lexicons. These are all acceptable 16 variations, each transliterating the sounds of the Hebrew letters in an appropriate manner. Some represent the vowels Aleph and Ain with apostrophes and others do not. Some lexicons transliterate the Hebrew Yod with an I, some with a Y, while others use both to designate the source of the sound. Further, while the Hebrew letter Shin is most similar to the English S, it usually conveys an SH sound. Similarly, the Hebrew Thith is akin to the English T, but most often is spoken with a TH pronunciation. Accordingly, you will find many variations of the same word in this book. Also, so that you know, the use of italics is the customary way to convey foreign words in a translated text. It helps distinguish them from the primary language in which the document is written. While we are on this subject, I would like to dispel a myth. Scholars will tell you that Hebrew is a consonant-only language, but that is not true. The purpose of this deception is to artificially elevate the status of the Masoretic text, which is vocalized through diacritical markings, and to underscore the invalid impression that Yahweh's name is unpronounceable. But in fact, there are 5 vowels among the 22 letters which comprise the Hebrew alphabet. They are, Aleph, Hey, Wah, Yod, and Ain. Yahweh's name is pronounced using 3 of these vowels, Yod Hey Wah Hey, Hui, vocalized, Y middle dot R middle dot R middle dot R. Collectively, there are 260 individuals and places in God's Torah and Nabi which incorporate aspects of Yahweh's name, all of which can be accurately pronounced. When read from the perspective of the subject-verb-object sentence structure we are accustomed to in English, Elohim is the second word in Yahweh's opening salvo. It is the plural of El, meaning Almighty, Mighty One, Deity, or God. And both El and Elohim are based upon Eloah. Written right to left in the original Hebrew alphabet it looks 17 like this, or like this in the contracted plural form. Eloah begins with an Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. In its pictographic form, it represents a ram's head which symbolizes strength, power, might, and authority. It conveys the will and ability to lead and protect. The second letter, Alamed, was drawn in the shape of a shepherd's staff. It conveys leadership, direction, guidance, nurturing, and protection. Used commonly as a prefix, Alamed serves as a preposition in Hebrew, communicating movement toward a goal, in this case toward God, himself. The Wah, which designates the O sound in Eloah, and is the reason its contracted plural form is pronounced, Elohim, resembles a tent peg. This is important because they were used to enlarge and secure the homes of those who first heard Yahweh's title. These sturdy stakes also secured the tabernacle, which represented God's home among his people. Today, as then, the Wah is used as a conjunction and conveys the ideas of increasing, connecting, adding, and enlarging. In this regard, it is interesting to note that the oldest extant example of the Wah is from the time of the Exodus 3,500 years ago. In this depiction on a lead tablet, the upper portion of the letter was drawn with an enclosed circle rather than the open V shape. As such, it was able to hold the ropes needed to secure a tent. The final letter, a Hey, was the most elaborate in its detail. Like the Wah, it is found in both Yahweh's name and his title. The highly distinctive Hey was drawn in the form of a person standing up, pointing and reaching up to the heavens. It screams, pay attention, be observant, and take notice of what God has done and said. Today, Hey 18 still means hey, I'm over here. Look at me. Pay attention. To achieve the plural form as it was scribed in the opening line of the Torah we must add 2 letters, a Yod and a Mem. The Yod, which depicts God's arm reaching down and out with an open hand, is the first letter in his name, Yahowah. It reveals that God is not only reaching out to us with an open hand of friendship to lead us to him and to lift us up but also that he, himself, will engage personally to do this work on our behalf. The Mem was drawn to show waves on water. The visual image could be of the Ruach, wind and spirit, driving them. Water is not only the universal solvent and shown throughout the Torah as the source of cleansing, it is also depicted as the source from which life emerged. Bringing this all together, the characters which comprise Eloah, and its contracted plural form Elohim, meaning Almighty God, paint a picture of Yahweh being supremely powerful while acting in the role of a shepherd who cares for his flock, leading, nurturing, and protecting his sheep. He is focused on enlarging his family while defending them. By using the plural form, Yahweh implies that his parental nature as our Ab, Heavenly Father and Ruach, spiritual mother were present at creation. Yahweh will affirm this in his next statement, which focuses on the role of the Spirit during the creative process. It is also something Yahweh's son, David, confirms throughout his martial, word pictures, proverbs. They were written from the perspective of our Heavenly Father and spiritual mother to us as God's children. While there is only one God, Elohim serves to affirm that Yahweh perceives himself as part of the relationship, which is being created through the covenant family. 19 Reinforcing the single unity of Elohim, God and the Berith, covenant, the verb Bara, create was written in the third person singular, not plural, i.e., he created, rather than they created. Speaking of Bara, it is the lone verb in God's initial statement to his creation. Its primary meaning is to create, both in the sense of initiating something new which had not been in existence before and of renewing and transforming that which already exists. Consistent with its procreant and regenerative connotations, Bara conveys the choice to transform and to perfect, performing whatever it takes to bring something or someone into a preferred state. It speaks of initiating in the sense of cutting a covenant, and of life's beginnings, and thus birth. A composite of Bara's overall influence on Yahowah's message might read: the Creator chose to begin a relationship, initiating the process by dispatching part of himself to perform whatever was needed to bring about a preferential state, so that we could exist creatively. By using Reshith, Elohim and Bara, or in ancient Hebrew, Yahowah is saying that he wants us to join him in his family, and that he is first and foremost our Father and our Shepherd, the one who leads us, who protects us, who cleanses us, and who restores and nurtures our life, empowering and enriching us. He is not only introducing us to his covenant family, but he has also provided us with his word, the means to know him, the means to understand what he is offering, and then respond appropriately. In the world's only credible creation account, the Spirit who inspired Bersith is putting us on notice. We can accept or reject the claimant and his claims. In the thousands of pages which follow his Bersith, Genesis testimony, the author provides what he deems to be 20 sufficient evidence for us to evaluate the veracity of his claims and determine the wisdom of choosing to acknowledge him as our Creator. What you choose to do with this information is up to you. The fourth and sixth words in Bersith share a common base, eth. As we discussed previously, this Hebrew term doesn't require translation into English, but since it enhances the content, eth reveals that Yahowah was in close proximity to his creation, and that he initiated the process for the purpose of accompaniment and relationship. He was, therefore, seeking an eth, close association with its culminating event, the creation of man. Eth can be rendered as with, among, through, accordingly, and also. It is derived from oath, meaning sign or signal, which is something to be observed and remembered. It is related to youth, meaning consent, as in reaching an agreement. The most revealing aspect of eth's presence, not once but twice in the creation account, is that Yahowah certifies his proximity to the epicenter of what was about to occur. This is significant because time is relative to the observer. In the presence of tremendous energy or velocity, even mass, the rate at which it flows slows dramatically. By sharing and confirming his location relative to these events with eth, we are able to synchronize a clock on Earth with one at the inception of the universe and thereby validate the timeline Yahowah provided. Nearly as revealing, albeit in a different way, with the second inclusion of eth, God is conveying the reason he was there in the first place. Yahowah was seeking to create something he did not have and yet wanted. It was the one thing that would make his existence interesting, indeed, meaningful and rewarding. He wanted the very thing he designed us to value above all else, our children. God sought to develop a mutually beneficial and familial 21 relationship with humankind. And he wants to remain in close association with us throughout the universe and time. Pronounced differently, the Hebrew letters in eth, aleph tor, can be rendered as ath, which speaks of a miraculous sign. According to the Bersith account in particular, it could be considered the most extraordinary sign. It is, therefore, indicative of the insights it conveyed in this account, all of which can be corroborated. Shamaim, Yahowah's fifth word to mankind, is often used to describe the heavens, the spiritual abode of God. It is also the principal Hebrew word to address the physical universe, the realm of stars. Both are relevant to the expressed storylines. Shamaim is based upon a Hebrew root meaning to be lofty and elevated. As such, it speaks of God's plan to elevate us to his spiritual abode. But more than this, and in recognition that Shamaim is the plural of Sham, Shem, several additional insights are possible. Sham speaks of a specific place or location which is identified by the Shem, personal and proper name of its principal occupant and associated with his reputation and renown. Sham also serves as the base for two of Yahowah's most repeated requests, that we Shama, listen to him by Shema, observing his words, hearing what he has to say by closely examining and carefully considering his testimony. Shem, Shama, and Shema take us to this Sham. In this regard, the term anti-Semite actually means against the name and place. The name is Yahowah, and the one he gave his people, Yahweh, Jews. The place is Yahudah, Judea and Yisrael, Israel. One of the more interesting verifications that Shamaim can be used to describe Yahowah's home in the spiritual realm is found in the 78th Psalm. There we learn that Heaven 22 has a doorway, at least metaphorically. Speaking of his frustration over his children's total lack of appreciation for what he had done for them during the Exodus, their infidelity, rebellion, and overall irritating attitude, we find. Yahowah became frustrated with Israel because they did not trust in God, Elohim, and did not rely, Batar, on his deliverance, freedom, and salvation, Yahowah. And yet he had directed, Zawah, the clouds and sky, Sashak, from a higher dimension, Mal, and he had opened, Pathak, the door, Deleth, to the heavens in the spiritual realm, Shamaim. Mizmor, Song, Psalm 78, 21-23. Consistent with this declaration, Passover is the doorway to life in heaven. It was opened for the children of Israel the night before the Exodus began, and again for all mankind by Daud when he fulfilled the Mikra in year 4000 year. As this Mizmor, Psalm suggests, God does not ask a great deal of us. But there are some baseline requirements for the relationship to be mutually beneficial. These include walking away from religion and politics, trusting and relying upon Yahowah, and walking to God along the path He has provided so that He can perfect us. In addition, He asks us to observe the instructive conditions of His covenant, all of which are presented in Bereshith, Genesis. And it is here that we learn that He wants us to circumcise our sons as a sign to demonstrate that we are set apart unto God and are committed to raising our children within this unique relationship. The seventh word of God's first sentence is eres. Its primary definitions include, land, region, territory, earth, or material realm, which is the preferred rendering in this declaration because it speaks of the physical universe. In this context, eres cannot represent our solar system, the planet, Eden, or Israel, because these things wouldn't 23 come to exist for another 10 billion years, although they are all derivative parts of the physical universe. Eres is the fourth most prevalent noun in the Torah and prophets. It is found an astonishing 2,500 times to describe related concepts which often differ in location and scale. At the heart of eres is a concept both small and large of the natural material, especially the minute physical particles of matter from which men, the land, earth, and the universe are comprised. Its root means to be firm, associating it with that which is tangible, physical, and material as opposed to spiritual. Therefore, in this declarative statement, at this time and in this context, the most natural and appropriate way to distinguish between Shamaim and Eres, is to differentiate Shamaim and Eres as the spiritual and material realms. It is important to acknowledge that the first people who heard this message had no concept of planet Earth, much less any notion of what comprised the other planets, moon, sun, or abundance of stars. It is likely that they would have understood Eres as the material world beneath their feet, as the ground itself. And they would have seen the heavens as the opposite of that which they could touch, as the abode of God, and as the place they wanted to be welcomed into at the end of their mortal life. So long as this distinction was between physical and spiritual, their perceptions would have been accurate and meaningful. And yet today, blessed as we are with a worldview and with a partial understanding of the universe, we can deduce a much bigger and more profound sense of these words. In that way, Yahowah's word is meaningful to all people throughout time. Bringing it all together, the first 7 words reveal, in, bar, near, within certain limits of, and in proximity to, regarding the account of, the beginning, Reshith, at the start of time and the initiation of the 24 process of existence, concerning the first fruits of the labors of the head of the family, while addressing the thing which is of first and foremost importance, from Rosh, the head, the top and uppermost, the sum and total, first and beginning, the Almighty, Elohim, God, in proximity to while closely associated with, eth. For the purpose of a relationship and close association, created, Bara, conceived and caused a new existence, choosing perfect transformation and birth, planning, preparing, shaping, producing, and fashioning something out of the elements and making it happen, the Ha, spiritual world, Shamaim, heavens and abode of God, and, Wa, the Ha, material realm, Eres, matter, the physical and natural world. Bereshith, in the beginning, Genesis 1:1. In this light, let's take a moment to ponder the massiveness of our earthly spaceship and its intergalactic home. There is a reason for its enormous scale in energy, space, and time. It had to be precisely as it is for us to exist temporally as stardust transformed into life, and for us to have the option to choose greater dimensions, to be reborn in the spirit of light. Should any aspect of the universe as it was conceived differ by so much as 1 part in a million, 1 in 10,120, the ripple effect on every other aspect would cause the cosmos to implode. We could not and would not exist, nor could any form of life. While this does not prove the role of a creator, it does demonstrate just how marvelously creation is tuned for our existence. In our present form, trapped in the flow of time, humankind will never visit another planet, much less leave our solar system. 3-dimensional mass cannot be accelerated to the speed of light because the faster something moves, the greater its mass becomes. If an 25 object were to reach the speed of light, its mass would become infinite, filling the entire universe. Further, to move an infinite mass would take an infinite amount of energy, more energy than there is in the universe. Therefore, no material object can attain the speed of light, leaving the universal distances at 93 billion light-years across, far too great to navigate, even in a billion lifetimes. Complicating the matter, not only is the preponderance of the known universe beyond our reach, but because the most distant stars are moving away from us faster than the speed of light due to the stretching of space, even if we could travel at the speed of light, a physical impossibility, we still wouldn't be able to reach them. Our only hope of exploring the universe is to become greater than we are and eternal like our Creator. When that happens, when we become akin to light, we will embark on a grand voyage. There are over 100 billion galaxies, each averaging 100 billion stars to explore. Many, if not most, are replete with solar systems, planets, and moons. Therefore, when we avail ourselves of the covenant's promises and our souls are empowered such that we become spiritual beings, we will be able to travel through time and thus explore the vastness and brilliance of Yahweh's creative genius. We will become like God and enjoy the photon's perspective where, from its point of reference while traversing enormous distances, 186,282 miles per second, it requires no time to do so. Since speed is the rate at which an object covers distance over time, when time does not move, the velocity, which is the degree at which the position changes, becomes infinite. From the human perspective on Earth, a photon of light requires 93 billion years to traverse the cosmos, while from the photon's perspective, it would occur in an instant. 26 Not only is the vast scale of our universe instructive, demonstrating the need for a designer, but its minute scale is also thought-provoking. The molecular realm diminishes in scale equally rapidly and marvelously. The micro-realm is comprised of molecules, atoms, electrons, and quarks retreating infinitely inward beyond our vision. This suggests that our eternal investigations may one day be limitless in all directions and dimensions. This is why even agnostic scientists are anthropocentric, recognizing that man is actually at the center of the universe with regard to its scale, and that the cosmos was tuned precisely for human existence. But why was it tuned for us and by whom, are the questions we are exploring. Before we turn the page and consider Yahweh's second sentence, since our initial chapter was based upon the creative, renewing, and transforming aspects of Bara, let's ponder its implications relative to God's prime objective, His covenant. We will be enriched. Bara conveys an essential aspect of the covenant's role in Yahweh's plans. And the best way to understand God's word is to observe how He uses His words. Bara was deployed in conjunction with cutting the covenant in Shemoth, names, Exodus 34:10. Long after the universe had been created, long after the covenant had been established with Abraham, and in the immediate aftermath of Yahweh's liberation of His children from the crucible of human religious and political oppression in Egypt, we find God re-establishing His relationship with Beni Israel, the children of Israel through His prophet and shepherd Moses. The path to Bara begins. 27 Then, so and in addition, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahowah, our Eloah, God as directed in His Torah, teaching regarding His existence and our Shalom, restoration, descended, Yared, He came down, lowered and diminished Himself, and He bowed down, coming from a higher dimension to a lower one, in, within certain limits positioned in proximity to, the visible mass of condensed water vapor, Ha'anan. The relatively dense and opaque occlusion within the atmosphere of moisture or smoke sufficient to block most of the light, similar to a cloud, and stood, while Yazab, made a commitment to appear, present himself, and take a stand, with him, Imhu, in association with him, and in a close relationship with him, there, Shem, here and by name, close by to be properly known. And he called out to, summoned, and proclaimed, Kara, he recited aloud, invited, welcomed, encountered, and announced, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by His Torah, instructions regarding His higher existence, by name, Shem, with the personal and proper designation. Shemoth, names, Exodus 34:5. If you are accustomed to viewing God from a religious perspective, there are many surprises here. First, God had to diminish an aspect of Himself to meet with a man. Had He not done so, the power of His presence would have incinerated Moses. According to the implications of Yared and Yazab, Yahweh diminished Himself to take a stand alongside Moses, concepts which are incompatible with religion. Yahweh wants us to pronounce His name, to call out to Him by His name, to summon Him as we come to know Him. Those who do not use His name do not know Him. Those who do not invite Yahweh into their lives by name are estranged from Him. 28 Even more than pronouncing Yahweh's name and calling out to Him, Kara serves as the basis of Mikra, the title Yahweh chose to represent His 7 invitations to be called out and meet. They provide the path home, opening the doorway to heaven. Now that Moses had followed God's instructions, and had summoned God by name, and, so, Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, led him so he could send him, extended himself toward him, then passed over him to remove his transgressions, on account of and alongside, along with, before, and by, his presence, Panahu, his appearance. Shemoth, names, Exodus 34:6, in part. Passover is the first of 7 steps home. It opens the doorway to heaven and is required for us to exist in Yahweh's presence. It was conceived to make us immortal. Here, the root of Pesach, was used to reveal that Yahowah was going to extend himself to lead Moses, thereby sending him to liberate his captive children. The promise of a forgiving and compassionate God offering undeserved and unbounded mercy, who is long-suffering and loving, is neither recent nor religious. He has always been there for us, waiting in his words and ready to respond. These benefits are inherent in the covenant and describe Yahowah's primary intent in creation. His desire to share these things is why we exist. Best of all, the God who conveyed his personality and inner nature to us through Moses in the Torah is trustworthy and reliable, dependable and steadfast. He is what he has always been. His offer to provide these benefits remains unchanged and unwavering. 29 And he called out, summoned, and proclaimed, Wakara, he recited aloud, invited, welcomed, greeted, and announced, Yahowah, a transliteration of, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, Yahowah, Almighty God, the Mighty One, of benevolent, favorable, and forgiving, compassionate and affectionate relationships, Rachwum, generous and kind, deeply devoted and caring, tender and passionate, advantageous and dedicated personal interactions, from Rachum, deeply loving and friendly, sympathetic and concerned associations, and genuine mercy, Wachanyun, in addition to a heartfelt response to intervene and give an undeserved gift to those he befriends, predisposed to bestowing blessings, from Channon, merciful, long-suffering and slow to anger, a Rekaf, patient and enduring, not prone to resentment, persevering, in addition to abounding, Warab, considerable and abundant. Pertaining to the upper end of the scale, tremendously great, in steadfast love and unfailing devotion, Kesed, providing benefits, goodness and kindness, enduring affection, and favorable relationships, while completely trustworthy and reliable, Wa Emith, true, dependable, honest, sure, supportive, confirming, unwavering, and unchanging, and thus absolutely certain. Shemoth, names, Exodus 34:6. Moses knew Yahowah personally. God spoke directly with him. He inspired him to write the Torah and revealed many prophetic insights through him. Therefore, Moses' depiction of Yahowah is as wonderful as it is reliable. Yahowah, the God of the covenant, the voice of the Torah, our Creator, is compassionate, forgiving, merciful, patient, devoted, honorable, and dependable. With the actual, living God being all of these things, what was the purpose of creating religious gods? 30 Loyal love and unfailing devotion, Kesed, providing benefits, goodness and kindness, enduring affection, and favorable relationships, spares, protects, and preserves, Nazar, watches over, guards, saves, keeps, and maintains within an observant and protective relationship, so that, enabling the approach of, the thousands who learn and adopt the instruction as their own, Aleph, the thousandfold who are discerning, and become familiar, then teach the tribes. Imparting wisdom through evidence and reason while urging others to respond promptly so as to be increased a thousandfold, will be raised, supported, sustained, and carried away, Nasa, will be lifted up and forgiven, from widespread religious rebellion, Pesha, from societal revolt against the established standard and defiance against the authority figure, from being liable and invalidated as a result of being contrary, from that which distorts, corrupts, and perverts, Wa-A1, from that which twists and warps and is therefore wrong, depravity from which guilt and punishment are incurred, and from missing the way, Wa-Chatar, as well as from having been on a wrong and incorrect path. They will be pardoned and vindicated, Wa-Naka, they will be considered innocent, released from the consequence of what has been done, and not left destitute, they will not be banished or punished, Peel infinitive, the individual being acquitted is acted upon by God in a demonstrable way, while counting and recording, Hakad, taking stock and inventory of while holding accountable, and not pardoning or forgiving, Lo-Naka, not leaving alone or exempting from punishment, that which corrupts, distorts, and perverts, A1, guilt from twisting and warping as a consequence of being wrong, of fathers of parents on sons, Al-Beni, over children, and on their sons' sons, while Beni, with regard to their children's children, to the third and fourth generation, Al-Shilshim wa Al-Ribiyah, 31 addressing sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons. Shemoth, names, Exodus 34:7. One of the benefits of amplification, which is the process of using as many words as are appropriate to convey the full extent of the intended thought, is that when we come upon a word which can be vocalized in different ways, like elif, thousands, and aleph, learn, both connotations can be conveyed. And while God may have intended one over the other, preferring learning and teaching over thousands, both fit the context and both renderings are consistent with Yahowah's previous and subsequent instructions. What's particularly interesting here is that God just provided considerable specificity regarding the three types of crimes which we would otherwise be held accountable: widespread religious rebellion which leads societies astray, distorting, corrupting, and twisting his testimony, and missing the way. If we are among the thousands who adopt his teaching and embrace it, we will be among those he will lift up and raise as his children. What is surprising is how relatively few individuals will capitalize upon his instructions and benefit from the love and mercy which spares, protects, and preserves those who are observant in a protective relationship. Yahowah etched this same realization in stone as part of his second statement. He said that thousands, which among billions is just 1 in a million, would benefit from his mercy by closely examining and carefully considering the terms and conditions of his relationship agreement. Numbering those who will be saved from man's oppressive religious schemes in the thousands, as opposed to millions or billions, should send shivers down the spines of religious Jews, Christians, and Muslims. There are millions and billions of them. 32. The conclusion of this message is one that mankind doesn't want to hear. People don't want to accept responsibility for corrupting and perverting Yahowah's message with religious schemes or acknowledge the consequence on children into future generations. But Orthodox Jews breed Orthodox sons and daughters. And Christian parents raise Christian children. The same is true with children born into socialist secular humanist societies. Yahowah provided and enabled the path from mankind's oppressive religious and political world to his home where we can live forever. But the path is narrow, specific, restrictive, and very unpopular. Few find it. Fortunately for you, and for those you love, you are now looking in the right place. As we move ahead to the next statement, we find that Moses was pleading with God. He knew that his people deserved to be abandoned for their infidelity. They had acted like today's Christians, Muslims, and Jews, and had mocked the Creator, and his willingness to save them, by worshipping something they, themselves, had created. He was asking God for forgiveness, for a second chance. And that would require two things: God responding based upon his nature, not man's nature, and a different attitude toward him. So, Moshe, one who draws out, impulsively and anxiously, Mahar, hurriedly and emotionally, demonstrating considerable distress regarding the future, while clearly disturbed, inclined himself toward, Kadad, may have knelt down as he was motivated by thoughts of, the earth, Eres, the territory, region, and land, and of his own accord tried to explain, verbally explained, communicated, and declared with words, independently informing while making known, Hitpale imperfect. Speaking of his own accord without being 33 influenced by anyone, neither being predisposed or assisted in this regard, 34-8, saying, Amar, expressing, please, I am pleading with you, Nah, I am requesting of you because it is my desire, if, as a concession, I have found, Matzah, if I have attained, favor, Chen, mercy, and considered fondly, deserving compassion, in your eyes, Bar Einota, in your sight and from your perspective, my upright one, Eden Eni, my upright pillar and my foundation, my firm and established base, would you reconsider and travel, Naholik Eden Eni, it is my desire and request that you, sir, walk, in our midst, Bar Kireb Anaknu, among us. Indeed, it is true, KY, because surely, the people, the members of this family, are stiff-necked, stubborn, and difficult, Kasha or if you, hard-headed, and harsh, trying and perplexing, obstinate and vehement, but you can forgive, while Salak you can pardon and remove, our propensity to be wrong, La A1 Anaknu, our tendency to pervert the message and engage in depravity, becoming incorrect by twisting, corrupting, and distorting things, and miss the way, while La Chata Anaknu, regarding our offenses against the standard, and provide us with an inheritance, while Nahol Anaknu, and then you can accept us as your heirs. Shemoth, names, Exodus 34:8-9. Moses was naturally embarrassed for his people, which is why he was so anxious, something Yahowah neither desired nor acknowledged. However, he did not worship God as most every English Bible proclaims. This false notion is derived by inappropriately translating Torah as such when its primary meaning is to tell, to explain, to verbally communicate, announce, inform, and declare, all of which fit the context. Moses was quite literally imploring Yahowah, asking him to forgive one of the most inappropriate and revolting 34 acts in human history. After being miraculously freed from the most powerful and oppressive nation on earth, the children of Israel showed their true nature by creating and worshipping a false god. Speaking of fraudulent representations, our ears are more accustomed to hearing my Lord, a translation of Adonai, than they are to hearing upright one or upright pillar, which are from Eden. Adon and Baal mean Lord in Hebrew, and because they serve to define Satan's ambition, Yahowah uses them as the adversary's name and title. Down speaks of the upright pillar of cloud and then of fire which traveled with the children of Israel from this day forward, honoring Moses' request. More telling still, Down is descriptive of the upright pillar placed in the center of the tabernacle of the witness. Therefore, in this case, the more familiar Adonai, my Lord depiction is A1, an errant corruption which causes people to chatter, miss the way. And the Eden, upright one designation is the only one who can naka, forgive and pardon us. Before we move on, let's consider Moses' evaluation of the Israelites in his company circa 1450 BCE. He said, "Indeed, it is true that the people are stiff-necked, hard-headed, and stubborn, both perplexing and obstinate. It would be fair to say, at least considering how few YYV1C1 Jews acknowledge Yahowah and follow his guidance, that not much has changed in the past 3.5 millennia other than that the relationship has degraded politically and religiously. Yet even then, as now, Moses recognized that Yahowah can forgive our propensity to be wrong and miss the way. Should we do our part, Yahowah remains willing and able to provide us with an inheritance, one we find by engaging in the covenant." 35 This enlightening excursion brings us to the passage in which Yahowah used Bara, create in conjunction with trying to re-establish his covenant with children who had already turned their backs on him. So, long after the universe had been created, long after the covenant had been established with Abraham, and in the immediate aftermath of his children's rebellion, we find God renewing his relationship with his wayward family. And in this declaration, we find Yahowah doing far more than Moses had asked. And he said, "Wah ma," then God replied, "Behold, here and now, Hine, look up and pay attention, I am cutting any carrot, I am establishing by confirming through separation, a familial covenant relationship, Berith, a family agreement based upon a binding oath and promise, from Beth, family and home, and conspicuously announcing it before, Nejd, in the presence of, all of your people, Shurla Motta, your entire family. I will act and engage, doing, Asar, I will perform, bringing about, wonderful and marvelous things, Pala, amazing and extraordinary acts which are awe-inspiring to fulfill that which is exceedingly special, which relationally, Asher, to show the way to the benefits of the relationship and provide guidance to get the greatest joy out of life, have not been conceived nor created, lo Bara, have not been begotten or fashioned, nor have they previously existed, throughout the earth, Bar Shurl Eres, in all the material realm, nor among any of the people from different races and places, Bar Shurl Gawim, in any other nation or ethnicity, and the entire family, War Shurl Haham. So all of the people, will see, Ra, will be shown, consider, and perceive, Kal perfect, literally at this moment in time, who, Asher, is leading the way to the blessings and benefits of the relationship, is in your midst, Ottabar 36 Kireb, is among you, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, he is doing this work, Hu Ethmar say, he is engaged, expending the energy to accomplish what must be done. Indeed, KY, truthfully and by contrast, it will be awe-inspiring, Hugh, it will be awesome, engendering respect and reverence, what I will do when engaged and acting with you to lead you along the proper path, Asher Asai Motta, what, to show the correct way to receive life's most rewarding benefits I will bring about and accomplish in conjunction with and together with you, Kal participle masculine singular absolute. Yahowah acting alone will literally accomplish such that he is described and known by his actions. Shemoth, names, Exodus 34:10. Yahowah was not kidding. This is the most extraordinary response a beggar has ever received. Moses had pleaded with God, imploring him to overlook the fact that the children of Israel had left Egypt, but not their gods. He somehow knew that, in spite of the people's obstinance, Yahowah had a plan to resolve their propensity to miss the way. Sure, they were dead wrong, but God could make them right such that they could still be his heirs. He had implored God to continue with them, and God said that he would do far better than that. He would reconcile the relationship such that they would remain his children. Yahowah conceived the work he was going to do on behalf of the covenant and his family long before this announcement, so the only thing new was that his means and methods were previously unknown within the human experience. No pagan god had ever bowed down to or suffered for man, but the only real God would do these wonderful and amazing things. 37 Yahowah's most marvelous and astounding deed was his willingness to support the decision his son had made to save his people. Daud would offer to burden his soul with our guilt, taking it to Shaul to personally pay the price required to enable our reconciliation. It is the most amazing episode in the greatest story ever told.